listening to the HollowNet on Mojo 50 Radio. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now.
Oh, yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, children of all ages, the new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You are listening to, and damn, I hope you're watching the HollowNet on the mighty, the powerful Mojo 50 Radio. Today, it is Saturday. It is the 15th of May in the year of our Lord 2021, and the world specifically is focused on Israel this week. It seems that the Israelis, the Palestinians, are once again on the brink of all-out war. But that's not what Biden-Harris want us to see. That's not what the mainstream media want us to see. That's not at all what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants us to see. That's not what they want us to think about. They want us to think about the Palestinian people and how this is all about them and how they've been wronged. In fact, they want to show us something like this.
Free Palestine. That familiar chant happening at rallies around the world. A few minutes ago, we showed you protests from the US. This one now from Cape Town. The South African government has formal diplomatic relations with the Palestinians and recognizes the state of Palestine. Well, thousands of people marched in London waving Palestinian flags. A few people holding Israeli flags also appeared as police stood guard. Well, I'm joined by Dr. Mustafa Barghouti now from...
We're going to go ahead and shut them up. So, CNN wants you to pay attention to all the protests and how the Palestinian people have been wronged and how this is all mean old Israel's fault and, you know, damning President Trump and the Republicans for supporting our longtime allies in the people of Israel and specifically in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But here is what the rest of us who do not tune in to the Clinton News Network and MSLSD, here is what the rest of us saw this past week. That is what we saw. We saw 2,300 rockets fired in a cowardly surprise attack against the people of Israel. And these were not fired against military targets. These were not fired at the IDF or at the military bases or at, Ben Gurion International Airport or anything like that. These were fired at civilian targets. These were fired at school buses. These were fired at schools, nursing homes, hospitals, houses, residential neighborhoods, up to 90 miles into Israel from the Gaza Strip. Tel Aviv has been getting slammed with rocket fire. And the IDF put out one particularly chilling video, which I'm going to share with you real quick. And, people are going to get on me for, spouting a bunch of Israeli propaganda on my show. You know what? Fine. Deal. But it's quite accurate. Imagine if it was a different city. Imagine if it wasn't Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. Imagine if it was Washington. They end with, what would you do if it was your city? And a father sheltering his little boy as rockets fall all around them, asking, can I go home now? Now you can probably hear him in the background in this recording because I'm recording during the daytime hours. I've got my 3 little boys and my little girl. And I watch this video. I see parents huddling with their children as rockets fall from the sky. And I say to I presented it to members of my family thusly the other day. Let's paint a hypothetical scenario, okay? And, people who believe in, the Reconquista and, Mexican liberation and Aztlan and all those mestizo and Mexican revolutionary ideas, they'll probably get excited hearing this. But let's say hypothetically that a Hamas-like organization, I don't know, maybe one of the cartels gets a bee in their bonnet, looks at how Hamas does things in Israel and says, I bet if we do something like that to Texas or to Arizona, I bet we could get the world to pressure the United States government to give us everything that we want, just like they do with the Palestinians. So let's bring this hypothetical scenario to mind. Where I sit presently, let's see here. Hang on, I'm searching this. I want to know. What is my distance to the Mexican border? So let's say to Ajo, Arizona. Ajo is where the nearest border to me is. I am 96 okay, so it's a little bit south of Ajo, actually. Let's drag it out to Sonoita. Okay, so we're gonna map it out to Sonoita. I am 179 miles where I sit right now, at the outskirts of the Sonoran Desert, at the Mojo 50 forward operating base in the Phoenix Metro. I am 179 miles from the Mexican border. Okay, so at that range, at the approximately 90 miles that the rockets are penetrating from the Gaza Strip into Israel, I'm curious. $83.3 miles from Tucson to Sonoita. I'm sorry, to Nogales. And the Mexicans call it Heroica Nogales, because that's where several battles of the Mexican Revolution were fought. So it got the Heroica, or heroic, designation. So let's hypothetically say that a hostile faction, not a nation state, because Hamas is not a nation state, neither is the Palestinian Authority, but a hostile faction within Mexico that was out of the government's control, like a cartel, except with political views, except their stated goal is not the sale of drugs or the trafficking of human beings, but the Reconquista. And they decided to launch a Hamas-like terrorist movement. Imagine if you lived in Tucson or if you lived in Sierra Vista and rockets came raining down from the sky. Put yourself in these shoes. Okay, because I want you to place some historical context. We're going to draw some parallels here because people can't seem to grasp what the deal is with Israel and Palestine. I'm going to break it down for you, at least to my best understanding. I am not Israeli. I am not Palestinian. I grew up on the East Coast. I have had the pleasure of having in my life many people of the Jewish faith. I have known many Middle Eastern people of Egyptian, Lebanese, Cypriot, Syrian, even Jordanian lineage. And I've spoken to them on this subject. And we've had spirited debates on this subject. But when you don't have a historical understanding, when you don't have that contextual understanding, when you can't draw a parallel to yourself, you're going to be limited in your grasp. But before we do that, I need to do a favor for a friend. And here's what I'm going to do. I am going to ask all of you now, within the sound of my voice, and within the sound of my children's yelling, if you can hear it in the background, I am going to ask you to check out something for our good friend, the Leprechaun. Okay? Derailed Shenanigans Con is coming August 19th through 21st in Nashville, Tennessee. There is a Facebook event that is open for that. Hold on a second, guys. It's on my birthday? Damn it, Lep. It's on my birthday? Derailed. That's got to be Sean. That's got to be Sean Sheeler. And yup. Eric Miller invited me. It is a mojo gathering of listeners and friends of the Off Track Syndicate in Room 13, starting at Mission Barbecue and ending at the Redneck Riviera Bar and Barbecue. Come for the conversation, stay for the shenanigans, and get derailed. Guys, gals, that's the weekend of my birthday, man. Come on. I'm hitting the big 3-5. Interested. I don't know if I'm going to be able to turn up, but I can tell you, you're going to have the Derailed crew there. Looks like Leprechaun's going to be there. Whiskey Six in the gang. So make sure you give them some love. If you're going to be in that neighborhood, make it happen. Join them for some fantastic fun and shenanigans. Go get Derailed in Nashville, Tennessee, August 19th and 20th. You had to do it on my birthday. You had to do it on my birthday. Come on. All right. And real quick, before we get into it, it is indeed your boys over at MyPillow. You need to go over to MyPillow.com, MyPillow.com. Use that promo code MOJO50, MOJO50. They have dog beds now. They have dog beds. I have the Giza Dream Sheets. They are out freaking standing. I love my Giza Dream Sheets. I have 2 sets. I'm going to be buying some more because I want to get them onto all the beds in the house. 4 kids we've got, and they've got currently the sheets that you get at like Walmart, you know, So I want to get them some nice sheets. So we're going to be expanding our Giza Dream Sheet selection, picking up some My Pillows for them as well. The slippers apparently are amazing. I haven't tried those yet. So's the bathrobe and the towels. But you go on MyPillow.com. You can pick up anything on there. Anything on there. And it is going to get you a nice discount on Mojo50. The guarantee is amazing. Okay, the guarantee for MyPillow is fantastic. And you're supporting a business that is supporting American values. Mike Lindell, he is really one of the best of us right now. He is going toe-to-toe with the Dominion machine. He is staring down the barrel of a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit just for standing up for the American voter. And God bless him. He is a great example of how you can rise above and you can be better than you ever thought you could be. Another quick thing, by the way, before we get back into it. If you have not subscribed to the HollowNet on Patreon or Subscribestar yet, I invite you to do so. That will give you access to my new page, my new setup, my new newsletter, which is the HollowNet Premium newsletter. That's the wrong key. Here we go. And that will basically give you all the stories that I write. So you will basically be riding along with me as I write throughout the week. And this is going to be what I talk about because this is the news that I've handled, that I've been involved with, that I know. Most of what I'm going to cover on the show comes from here. I've written about it already. So if you have a chance, get on Patreon, get on Subscribestar. $10 a month subscription gets you the early access to the Premium Digest, the HollowNet Premium Digest, and it is a great way to support us. And of course, you could always pick up some sweet, sweet swag. Now, moving right the heck along, I wanted to give some background here. And I have this story out. It's on GOP Newsfeed. It's the evil left show their full support for terrorism publicly. And Congresswoman Ilhan Omar took to Twitter to virtue signal Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Representative Rashida Tlaib, the whole squad. Okay? They've been coming out in defense of the Palestinians and supporting the Palestinians. She gave her tone-deaf analysis. She said, too many silent or dismissive as our U.S. tax dollars continue to be used for this kind of inhumanity. I'm tired of people functioning from a place of fear rather than doing what's right because of bullying pro-Israel lobbyists. Nobody's bullying me. Nobody's bullying me. This is apartheid, plain and simple. No, this is not apartheid. This is not South Africa. Get off of it. Somebody responded to her, the attack at Al-Aqsa Mosque by Palestinians who hurled rocks and firebombs from inside a holy place to Islam are indeed inhumane. Now, why is all this going on in Israel? Why did Israel, fast, quick, and in a hurry, just promptly go straight to... Why did this happen? There are two reasons. Number one, the Palestinians, they smell weakness. It's all over. They understand that the Biden-Harris regime is not going to stop them. They know good and well that nobody is going to say boo. The scariest thing, this never would have happened under Donald Trump, because Donald Trump would have rolled in heavy. The Fifth Fleet would be parked out in front of Jeddah right now. But, I'm sorry, Jeddah, that's actually from Star Wars. No, Jeddah actually is a city in Israel too. Let's see, Jeddah, Israel. No, Jeddah's in Jordan, right? No. Let's see. City of Jeddah. Oh, it's Saudi Arabia and Jeddah. No, what was I thinking of? I think I was thinking of Ascalon, or either way, my geography is a little bad. So we're going to take a look right now at this story from GOP Times. According to the Times of Israel, they give us the proper background for why all hell broke loose this time. It's pick a time. You go back through history. But in all, over 70 Palestinians... let me go back here. This entire explosion of terrorism centers around the East Jerusalem area of Sheikh Jarrah, as the Palestinian Arabs refer to it. Several Jewish and Arab families have been embroiled in a property dispute there that has finally been ruled upon, with the eviction of the Arab families now imminent. Okay? Times of Israel reports, in all, over 70 Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah are set to be evicted in the coming weeks to be replaced by right-wing Jewish Israelis. The Palestinians live in houses built on land that the courts have ruled were owned by Jewish religious associations before the establishment of Israel in 1948. Okay? The anticipated decision to evict the families came as Jerusalem lives through tense, violent days. The city has been on edge in recent weeks as Palestinians have clashed with Israeli police, with both sides blaming the other for igniting the confrontations. Over 300 Palestinians have been wounded in confrontations with police, including several seriously injured by rubber-tipped bullets to the head, eye, and jaw, according to the Palestinian Red Crescent. More than 20 Israeli officers were lightly injured. Here's the disconnect, as the Time reports. Palestinians charge that a 1970 Israeli law, which is not discriminatory on its face, mind you, in practice allows only Jews to reclaim lost property in East Jerusalem. No similar law exists that would allow Palestinians to claim their lost property from Israel's War of Independence inside other parts of Israel. There's an extremely simple explanation for this that nobody really wants to talk about. The Israelis won the war. The Palestinians, because they fought on the side of Jordan, Lebanon, and Egypt, and the other aggressor nations, lost. They lost. The ultimate arbiter of clear title is the conclusion of a war. Those people lost. Plain and simple. Further, as the courts found, the Supreme Court of Israel, the legal claims of the Israeli families predate those of the Palestinians considerably. The Palestinians' claims in Jerusalem, specifically in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood, originate with the Jordanian government during the occupation of East Jerusalem from 1948 to 1967, when the land, stolen from its Jewish owners by the government of Jordan, was leased to the Palestinian Arabs. Ha ha! So let me lay this out for you, okay? 1948, Israel declares independence, unilaterally from the mandate of Britain. The Israeli War of Independence starts. The Kingdom of Jordan and all surrounding Arab nations immediately attempt to crush Israel. Israel, against all odds, wins the war. But the West Bank and East Jerusalem remain in Jordanian hands. It is the 1948 ceasefire. Following, you have a 20-year gap, a 19-year gap between 1948 and 1967, where the West Bank is under Jordanian jurisdiction and so is East Jerusalem. During that time, Jordan did not want the Palestinian refugees in their country of Jordan. So what did they do with them? They set them up in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. The way they did that was the homes that were confiscated from Jewish owners who were expelled from the West Bank and from East Jerusalem were leased by the Jordanian government to Palestinian families in long-term leases. Okay? Now, these are properties that were owned by Jewish families and Jewish organizations through clear title and legal purchase under the Ottoman government that predated World War I and the British Mandate. So this goes into British mandatory law, and this goes to Ottoman law, all the way back at the beginning of the 20th century, when these properties were purchased by Jewish religious groups and families in the early 1900s, like 1907, one of them went back to. So, the claims of these Israeli families predate those of the Palestinians. Now, how did they get them back? Israel launched the Six-Day War in 1967 and smashed all of their opposition. This is when they beat back Egypt so bad they took the Sinai, and the international community had to convince the Israelis to give the Sinai back to Egypt. And they knocked out the Golan Heights from Lebanon. They retook the Gaza Strip. They retook the West Bank, and they retook East Jerusalem. So what did that do? That meant these properties were no longer under occupation by Jordan, and the Jordanian government's leases to the families who were living in stolen Jewish property were now void because war clears all titles. Isn't that amazing? We're gonna circle back to this. Jen Psaki. We're gonna come back to this after the break. Stick around, because this is not all that damn complicated, especially when I put it into context for people living in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. You're gonna love it. Stick around. You're listening to the HollowNet on the Mighty, the Powerful Mojo 50 Radio.
on Mojo 50 Radio. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now.
And we're back. You're listening to HollowNet on the mighty powerful Mojo 50 Radio. Thanks for sticking with us through the break there. If you were watching on the Facebooks, the YouTubes, the BitChutes, or anywhere else where the video stream is acquired, you just heard Why Y'all So Stupid by Tom MacDonald, the counterculture warrior. His new album just dropped. Make sure you insert that into your ear holes if you enjoy rap music in general. Or MAGA rap in particular, like, Tyson James, Bryson Gray, those kind of guys. Definitely dig the sound, and I dig the fact that they're pushing back against woke culture. Love it. Love it. Good stuff, man. Would love to have Tom on the show sometime. But before we get back into really tearing apart this complete and total bull narrative that the left, Democrat Socialist, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Biden-Harris regime, are all trying to push about the trouble in Israel this week and the escalating tensions and escalating violence, it's crap. I've pointed out already how it's crap, but we're going to go deeper, okay? Deeper. All right, so real quick, we need to talk about preparewithmojo50.com, preparewithmojo50.com, because as we're about to illustrate, those sirens and rockets and explosions are never as far away as we think they are. They can be a lot closer than we could ever possibly imagine, and it might not even come across a border. It might come across a state line, might come across a county line, city line, block to block, across the street. At the rate we're going, anyway. So, please, go to preparewithmojo50.com, preparewithmojo50.com. The most responsible thing you can do these days is to make sure that you and your family are prepared for come what may. That way you can be a service to others, you can be a bastion that others can flock to your banner, and you can protect yourself, protect your neighborhood, protect your friends, your family, your loved ones. For that, you need a couple of things. You need food, you need water, you need Second Amendment accessories. You need all manner of supply. And through preparewithmojo50.com, you can get a lot of that. You can get your 4-week emergency food supply right now, $247. You can get your 3-month emergency food supply, $697. Okay, it's 21 different varieties of food in the 3-month. It's 16 varieties in the 4-week. 25-year shelf life, breakfast, lunch, dinner, drink, snacks, free shipping and handling, guys. This is the best way to prepare. I tell you this. Everyone I have spoken to who is prepared does not give a flying that people are laughing at them on Facebook. They sleep good at night knowing that if the excrement hits the rotating fan blade, that they're going to be fine. And I want you to have that comfort too. So, preparewithmojo50.com, preparewithmojo50.com. Do it today. Now, back to our little hypothetical discussion. Let's say, and I'm going to go to Google Maps here, because, I want to destroy my desktop. I want to absolutely kill it with a million Google tabs, because I'm evil. I am evil. No. So we're going to pop way, way out here. All right. We're going to look at the border. We're going to look at the borderlands, as they like to call it, not the video game. That would be way more fun. We're going over to California right now. San Diego to Tijuana. Basically twin cities. Mexicali to Calexico. Yuma to Baraquez. All right, and Guadalupe, Victoria, and Coahuila City. Then you head down. You have Heroica Nogales, only 83 miles from Tucson. Half that to Sierra Vista and Fort Huachuca. Okay, then you get over to Ciudad Juarez, right across from El Paso, Fort Bliss. Then from there, we get into Texas. Past El Paso, right? That's when you start getting down to Ciudad Acuna and Del Rio, You get down to Laredo, get down to Matamoros. Again, not all that far from Texas Riviera and Corpus Christi. So it is not at all outside of the realm of the possible that you could have an organization within Mexico develop with the stated goal, not of drug trafficking, not of human trafficking, but of reconquest, the reconquista. They can see what Hamas is doing and decide to apply those same tactics with the same goal, to create enormous international pressure on the United States to yield a territorial concession using the same grievance that the Palestinians apply to Israel. Because if you look back, historically speaking, we are not so far removed from the Mexican-American War. Yes, this was a war that took place in the 19th century, right alongside, within 30 years of the American Civil War. The first American Civil War, I should say. But the territorial loss cuts deep, still within the Mexican culture to this day. There are many people in Mexico today who believe that Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and California and Nevada are all rightful territories of the Mexican people. They feel that revanchism is the French word. Revanchism is the sensation of being aggrieved and wanting to be made whole. That is what the Palestinians attest to, that the land of Israel is theirs by right. But what revanchism ignores is right of conquest. It's not something we like talking about, but historically speaking, it is apt. When you win the war, you win the land. It's just how it goes. There's even legal dicta for this. People don't like to talk about it. It seems very barbaric these days. We seem beyond that, but I'm sorry. Right of conquest works today. Why don't you go to Ukraine? Go to the Crimean Peninsula. 10 years ago, that was a Ukrainian city. Not anymore. It's Russian now. How much did Barack Obama do about it? Nothing. Not even a red line. Not even a little bit. Right of conquest and a recognized treaty is what it takes to clear title from a legal perspective. And you can look this up online. The legality of conquest. Israel won their War of Independence in 1948, which extinguished any legal ownership rights within the lands that they conquered and controlled as of the 1948 ceasefire. Then they did it again in 1967, which by definition, conquest with a treaty legally extinguishes the previous property rights. It clears all titles. That's just how it works, kids. So the government that has de jure and de facto control has the legal right and capacity to nullify the actions of the previous government and to reinstate their own previous action. In this particular case, in the early 1900s, in 1907, Jewish religious organizations purchased plots of property in eastern Jerusalem. They purchased them legally from the Ottoman Vilayet government. That is the equivalent of a state within the Ottoman Empire, a Vilayet. It was the Vilayet of Aleppo, if I'm not mistaken. They purchased the land legally. They had title, which was on record with the government of the Ottoman Empire. Valid legal documentation, they owned that land. They owned that land when the occupation of the Middle East began by Britain and France. Ottoman Empire lost World War I badly. So what is present-day Israel became the British-Palestinian Mandate. The names are pretty interchangeable, right? That is the only time, by the way, the word Palestine ever appeared on a map. And it wasn't owned by the Palestinian people. It was a British mandate. Okay? So under the British mandate, the previous properties still applied because they made that decision not to expire title. So they made the decision that the legality of the Ottoman ownership documentations would carry. Because the goal was for Britain to build up the territory and then grant them eventual independence. What wound up happening is Israel declared independence the second the British mandate expired in 1948. They declared independence. They began their war of independence. And the surrounding Arab nations attempted to quash that and failed spectacularly. Israel won their independence. The war ended. The border stabilized under the 1948 ceasefire agreement. Since then, Israel grew and prospered and flourished. Then in 1967, the Six-Day War. They retake East Jerusalem. They retake the West Bank. Here's the difference between what happened pre-World War II and right of conquest, legally speaking. Now you have the UN. The Palestinians are a non-state. There is no nation of Palestine that was ever recognized by the whole world. Recognized by one or two states, but they did not have sovereign controlled territory. They were never an independent nation. Israel fought a war, declared their independence, and was recognized by the most powerful nations in the world. Therefore, they have legal claim. But the United Nations only ever said it was a peacefire. There's never been a treaty, a durable treaty, between Israel and Palestine until President Donald Trump started going around and creating the Abraham Accords, where the Arab nations that had formerly warred with Israel recognized its sovereignty. This is why the Abraham Accords were so earth-shattering on the international stage, and very few people realize that. When the major Arab nations around Israel started recognizing that, that becomes a durable treaty that puts the disputes over property to rest. Because war that is concluded in a treaty clears titles. It makes it official. Palestine was never a nation state. The nation states in play were Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria. Those were the big players. Iran and Iraq, they contributed some token forces. If memory serves, the Saudis largely stayed out of it. But now, the judgment came through. The Israeli Supreme Court heard the objections of the Palestinian families, weighed them legally in light of the 1970 law, which they are criticizing, even though it is not discriminatory on its face, but it goes back to Ottoman claims. The Jewish News Syndicate reported, the current dispute in Jerusalem's Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood involves several properties with tenants whose leases have expired, and in a few cases, squatters with no tenancy rights at all, against owner-landlords who have successfully won court orders evicting the squatters and overstaying tenants. The litigation has taken several years, and the owners have won at every step. The squatters and overstaying tenants have appealed against the eviction orders to the Supreme Court. The only decision that stands before the Israeli government is whether to honor the court's decision and enforce the eviction orders if affirmed by the Supreme Court, or to defy court orders and deny the property owners their legal rights. Now, this is a couple days old, but according to Reuters, the Palestinians' temper tantrum cost the lives of 32 Palestinians and 3 people in Israel, with Israel carrying out multiple airstrikes in Gaza in retaliation after the Hamas terrorists fired over 150 rockets into Tel Aviv. Since this story broke, we are now up to 2,300 rockets fired and over 300 independent retaliatory bombings by Israel. Just yesterday, a big story broke. This is from New York Post. Sorry, I don't have it up on the main screen right now. A misleading statement was tweeted by the IDF on Thursday night. Sorry, this came out yesterday. On Thursday night, that appeared to be a decoy intended to lure Hamas troops into strategic tunnels that were later bombarded by the Israeli army. A huge story broke that Israel was rolling heavy into the Gaza Strip. 9,000 troops. Wound up being a rope-a-dope. Hamas freaked out, ran into the tunnels that IDF air and ground troops were targeting. And they blew them to hell. They also took out a building and have drawn the scorn of the world because it was a media building where the Associated Press and Al Jazeera had office space right next to Hamas. Uh-huh. How insane is that? So now that I've spent like 3/4 of the show on the situation in Israel, right? I just want to make sure that you guys understand it. And can understand why this narrative that is being pushed by the leftists, by the Democrat socialists in Washington, D.C., is a sham. It is a lie. It is bull. It makes absolutely no rational sense, especially when you consider a similar exercise, a similar mental exercise happening here in the United States between the U.S. and, like I said, our hypothetical Mexican Hamas, who woke up one day and had a stack of papers in their hands. They had Mexican land grants, deeds that had been signed by the government of Benito Juarez or whatever president was in at the time. It said the land in Tucson belonged to them. And since America wasn't recognizing the rights to their property, they are going to bomb them. They're going to launch a series of 2,000 rockets from the city of Heroica Nogales on the Arizona border into downtown Tucson and Sierra Vista, targeting residential areas, hospitals, buses, schools. In Israel, a 6-year-old boy was struck with a rocket and killed instantly. At least one soldier was struck by an anti-tank missile and killed. The reason that Israeli casualties have been so small and Palestinian casualties have been so high is because the Iron Dome is an incredibly effective system, as you saw in the initial videos if you were watching, or if you've seen them on YouTube or Twitter. And the massive series of underground bunkers that Israel has are very, very effective. This is a nation that is extremely good at duck and cover. If the Iron Dome was not in place, if the IDF was not as vigilant as they are, to, by the way, repel a complete and total blind side attack, there was no warning, there was no announcement from Hamas and from Islamic Jihad that they were going to bombard these cities. They just did it. In the middle of the day, opened fire on civilians. The only way you can't compare that to Pearl Harbor is with death toll. Because Israel's been dealing with this for almost a century. They've gotten rather good at it. The reason the casualties are so high on the Palestinian side is because the Hamas command structure and military infrastructure are embedded in residential areas deliberately. They use human shields. They tell children to gather close to their anti-aircraft weapons and their radar emplacements and their rocket launcher sites. They put them on top of hospitals and schools. This has been well known for decades. Yet, still, we have American politicians who will sit here and decry the Israelis as apartheid, as racist, as bigots, as conquerors, as oppressors. Well, conquerors, yes, I'll give that, they won. But as oppressors, We've forgotten so much. But I want just one thing to stick in your head and to stick in your mind as you view this. The IDF's message should be bone-chillingly clear. What if it was your city? What if it was Tucson? What if it was San Diego? What if it was El Paso? The distance is not that different. San Diego and El Paso, and even Tucson, hell, it's shorter. It's an easier shot. And what would you call on the American government to do? Bomb them. Roll tanks. We would be screaming for our government to hit them with everything we had shy of a nuke if they rained rockets on an American city. It's easy for us to judge Israel. It's so easy for us to sit here, guarded as we are by the two magnificent oceans of the world, the Pacific and the Atlantic. It's so far away. It's so easy for us to forget how close it could be. Think about it. Who's better funded than the cartels? God, I hope they don't ever get an idea like that. Knock wood. But hell, it might not even have to come from outside the United States, the route we're taking right now. The left and the right have become so clear. People are complaining. I don't want to take off my mask because I don't want people to think I'm a conservative. How do I virtue signal to the other lefties that I'm good, that I'm a good person if I don't wear my mask? This country has broken stupid and broken insane at the same time. And each side is losing patience with the other. You know, I was listening to Tim Pool the other day, and I was listening to Glenn Beck, and Beck's not saying it, but Tim Pool was calling for an amicable divorce between the left and the right in the United States. How would that even look? How would that work? There'd be massive population displacement. And every time you see massive population displacement and migration like that, what follows inevitably? Conflict. Somebody doesn't want to go. Somebody starts shooting. Somebody shoots back. And there we are. Then it's not rockets coming over the border from Mexico. Then it's gunshots on the I-10. Which is not that unusual here either. But you get the idea. We look at Israel on the news and we go, when will they learn? You know who's going to learn? It's going to be us that learns. It's going to be the American people who learn. And that is terrifying. It's been a long time since this nation actually had to deal with the horrors of war firsthand. I think we've forgotten. We don't know what that's like, so we don't know to be afraid of it. And I don't know what the hell's going to snap us out of it in time. I don't know that anything can. But I do know that right now, the greatest ally America ever had in the Middle East, people who are ideologically and philosophically our brothers and sisters, are under rocket fire. And our government sits by and does nothing. Members of our government scorn the Israelis for defending themselves, for daring to execute a proper legal process in a property dispute. I fear that our ignorance is going to be what destroys us. The fact that our opinion can be swayed so easily that we can be puppeteered by the mainstream media and the left to not take into account the whole picture, to not look at the long history of the Middle East, the centuries, the millennia of blood that have been spilled for that land, and realizing that, yes, you have to go back and you have to decide who has the best claim to the land. And ultimately, the people with the best claim to the land are the last ones to win a war. They have the most powerful claim. It is what it is. Israel's the last set of winners. Before them, it was the British. And the British decided to continue the Ottoman system. Before that, it was the Ottomans. The Ottomans took it from the Egyptians. The Egyptians, they took it from Alexander and Ptolemy. And the Romans. You can go all the way back. The strongest claim is the one with the army to back it up. And the one who's willing to fight for it. But there are rules in how you fight honorably. And bombarding a civilian population with no warning, that tells you whose side you should be on. Folks, that's it for this week. You're listening to HollowNet on the mighty, the powerful Mojo 50 Radio. We need to wise up and we need to watch what's going on elsewhere. Today, it's them. Tomorrow, it could be us. Good night. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. From Phoenix, Arizona. End transmission. Hey folks, I got an extra couple of seconds here, so I just wanted to real quickly remind you about that event that is coming up in Tennessee. Again, I'm going to mention it twice during the show because it's important. It's the Derailed Shenanigans Con. It's in Nashville, Tennessee, August 19th and 20th, okay? It's being put on by Eric Miller. He's the guy who's organizing this, so touch base with him if you don't know where to find it. But again, it's going to be on Facebook group. Check it out. If you're going to be in that area, touch base with the people that are organizing it. It's going to be great fun. All right? It's the Derailed Shenanigans Con, Nashville, Tennessee, Friday, August 20th, 2021. All right, guys. Catch you later.